everybody, welcome back to Jessica's Reading Room. My name is Kim and we are here with another video book review. Now I realize that we haven't done one of these in a really long time, and so when I finished this book I was like, you know what, actually this is kind of the perfect one to do a video review on. So that's what we're going to do. Today we are going to be talking about Star Trek Memories, William Shatner, his classic memoir. Woohoo! As you guys know, I'm a really big Trekkie. Also, as you guys know, I also have some unpopular opinions about Star Trek that, yes, some people have made really well known and called me some pretty awful names for, and I'm still trying to figure out exactly why, because I'm pretty sure we're all allowed to have our opinions, but I guess I'm not. I don't know, okay? I don't know. Unpopular opinions is just part of who I am. I'm used to it. I'm used to the name calling. I'm used to being the odd man out. So if you think it bothers me, I've stopped doing that because my double chin comes out because that looks really weird. Okay, all right. Anyway, so I actually found this book from bookoutlet.com. I had a little bit of extra money that I could spend, and I decided to put in an order at Book Outlet. I did show this in my unboxing if you want to go back and take a look at that. But I said, okay, you know, it's Star Trek. Of course I'm going to like it. So I finished some other stuff. I said, you know what? It's about time I sit down and read this. I really need to. What kind of a Trekkie would I be if I didn't try and, you know, learn as much as possible from it? So I sat down, started reading it, and Ivan actually had the nerve, because he saw me reading it. He actually said to me, he's like, you know, I thought you were over your Star Trek phase. And I was like, dude, Trekkie for life, okay? It's not a phase. It's a lifestyle. Yeah, so there you go. And it just, I mean, it's like walking up to him and saying, well, I thought your Star Wars phase was over, but then that would make me unreasonable, and who knows? You know what? Who knows? So I decided to read this. I'm not going to lie. I went into it with a little bit of apprehension because I don't read nonfiction very often. So I was like, it's probably going to end up being really slow. It's probably going to end up taking me a while to get through it. I may have to take a break in the middle because that's kind of how I am with my nonfiction reads. Nuh-uh. I got through this book so fast. I mean, I'm pretty sure it took me all of two and a half days to get through it. And when I sat down to read it, I mean, it was just turning pages like that. And before I knew it, I was, you know, 100 pages in like my first sitting, and I'm going, what? What? So I was like, okay, all right, let's keep going with this. Let's go. Let's keep going. And I will admit that I learned stuff that I did not know before. I was having a great time with it. Basically, this book is all about the nuts and bolts of the Star Trek, the original series TV show back in 1966. It started out with Gene Roddenberry as a sickly, disabled kid who used his imagination to escape, who fell in love with science fiction, who wanted so badly to be a writer and share his stories with everyone. He ended up going to Hollywood, becoming a writer and producer for several other things long before Star Trek was ever even possible. When he actually came up with a solid idea and he went to go pitch it. Oh, I'm sorry. The studio Desilu, which was founded by Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball. They ended up picking it up, hoping it was going to be a cash cow that was going to get them out of their, you know, bankruptcy. And I got to the point, and see, I was really proud of myself for this, okay? And I promise I'm not going to go into like tons of random detail while I'm going over this review, but this one I kind of had to share. I'm sitting there and I'm reading through this, and Gene Roddenberry went to NBC to pitch the idea to see if the network would actually pick up the show. And I was like, And the way he was describing it, low budget, imaginative stories, characters that feel more like family, distant lands, alien species. For some reason in my brain, it just kind of clicked and I go, wait a second. Star Trek was not the first science fiction TV show to hit the airwaves. I mean, because, a lot of people will market it and say, oh, well, Star Trek, it was unique. It had never happened before. And I was like, wait a second. Wait, time out. And I sat there and I'm going, wait a second. Okay, all right. What about Lost in Space? Because when I was a kid, I actually watched Lost in Space long before I ever started watching Star Trek. Because I remember my mom would pick us up from, I think it was preschool / after school care or whatever. We'd go home, we'd catch the tail end of the Graham Kerr cooking show, and then at 4 o'clock, Lost in Space came on. We watched Lost in Space, 5 o'clock, my dad would come home. That was when Land of the Giants came on, but we very rarely got to watch Land of the Giants because we had to eat as soon as my dad got home. So that was just our afternoon routine. We got through so many Lost in Space episodes. I love that show. Don't get me wrong, I adore that show. And it wasn't until later that my dad actually introduced us to Star Trek. So in my head, I'm going, wait a second. And I went and I looked it up, and Lost in Space aired in 1965, as opposed to the original series, which aired in 1966. And in my brain, I'm going, why isn't Shatner talking about this? Has no one written about the relationship between Lost in Space and Star Trek? What? So this is like an incomplete memoir, an incomplete history of two of the biggest science fiction series on TV. What the hell, Shatner? What the hell? And as I'm looking through Wikipedia down at Lost in Space, I get down to this one little part where it said, did I say NBC before? I'm so sorry. I meant CBS. Roddenberry was trying to pitch Star Trek to CBS. I'm sorry. So I'm looking through this and I get down to this little blurb and it said CBS passed up Star Trek in order to air Lost in Space. And I was like, okay, all right. So I'm going, again, what the hell, Shatner? Why aren't you talking about this? So I go back to reading, and the very next paragraph, the CBS bigwigs were sitting down with Roddenberry. They were hanging on his every word. They were asking him all of these detailed questions, how to keep things low budget, how to use props, how to do this, how, all this stuff. And Roddenberry is sitting there, wow, they're really taking an interest in this. Why doesn't this feel, why is this still feeling a bit off? Come to find out, they asked all these questions of Roddenberry about Star Trek so that they could then reject Star Trek and use all the ideas that Roddenberry had told them for his own series with Lost in Space. And I'm going, see? And so I went running into the computer room to see Ivan, and I was like, no one had ever questioned my nerd status ever again, because you want to know what I just did. And I told the whole process to him. And poor Ivan is just sitting there completely glazed over. And I'm like, why aren't you more impressed by this? Why aren't you more impressed by the fact that I randomly pulled out information like that and had to go find it only to have Shatner surprise me and actually give me the information anyway? What? So yeah, so that made me feel really good about myself, and I was like, okay, all right. Anyway. And so it's basically the whole story of Star Trek from the very beginning, where it was just a nugget of an idea in Roddenberry's brain, all the way up to not just its cancellation date. By the time this book was written, they had actually just finished Star Trek VI, Undiscovered Country. Oh my gosh. This is what happens when I film in the middle of the night. You see, you know what I mean? They had just finished filming The Undiscovered Country, and Shatner even says, there's even talk of actually making a Star Trek 7. And I'm going, oh wow, okay, all right. So 1993 that this was written. And I found it really fascinating that generations and hadn't actually happened yet, but yet they were still in the era of Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. And it was just a fascinating thing to see. But just getting into the heads of people like Shatner, like Leonard Nimoy, like Nichelle Nichols, the producers, the writers, the directors, Nurse Chapel, who actually started out as number 1 on the very first pilot, The Cage. They didn't like her, so she bleached her hair blonde and ended up as Nurse Chapel. In the original series, she was actually Roddenberry's girlfriend at the time. Ended up marrying him, living with him all the way through until he died. Just the passion that the cast, the crew, the administration all had for this TV show, for this story. Roddenberry and a couple of his other staff who practically worked themselves to death trying to get, each of these weekly episodes done in time and on, the low budget that NBC and Desilu had them on. What word am I looking for? The crusade done by the fans when they found out that NBC was actually considering canceling Star Trek, both in between seasons 1 and 2 and seasons 2 and 3. I mean, this huge campaign that the fans did, whether it was letter writing, whether it was phone calls, whether it was bumper stickers, all of this stuff telling NBC, no, you can't cancel Star Trek. We want it. Seeing it move from the first season of every episode being brilliant all the way through to the third season where, unfortunately, a lot of it was half-assed. A lot of it was considered mediocre, where a lot of the cast members actually felt like they were losing their hold on their characters. The entire thing, I was just hanging on every word of this book, and I get that the reason that I liked it so much is the fact that I am a Trekkie, the fact that I can watch episodes from season 3 of Star Trek and still think that they are just as brilliant as the first season. And that's something also that kind of annoyed me, is that Shatner calls us Trekkers and not Trekkies. And I'm like, I'm not sure where he got that from. And I'm a little worried that I've been saying it wrong this whole time, but I like Trekkies better than Trekkers. So I'm sorry, Shatner. I'm going to stick with what sounds better. So thank you very much. I think my only real criticism with this book is that, at times a lot of names were thrown out. And Shatner would always do this thing where he'd be talking about the exact same person in a paragraph, but then in one sentence he'd use their first name, but in the second sentence he'd use their last name. And so it got a little confusing as to who he was talking to, and trying to keep everyone's names separate and and I'm not going to lie, I to this day don't know the difference, don't really know what a producer does as opposed to, all these other people who work on TV shows, on movies, etc. I don't pretend to know much about that. I know what a director does, and I know what a writer does. I'm still a little murky on what a producer does. I'm sorry, I'm not really a cinematic person. I'm a reader, so I don't really know. But that did get a little confusing. So that's like the only reason that I gave it 4 stars out of 5. It just got a little murky in some places. And I was like, okay, all right, I get it, but I don't totally get it. So I was like, all right. But overall, I thought this book was brilliant. Like I said, I learned so much. I actually got this really clear picture of what Star Trek meant to so many people. And the fact that, by the time this book was written, there were 6 movies plus 2 spin-off series. And by this time, that wasn't even the end of it. We still had 4 more movies to make. 1, 2, 3, 4 more spin-offs, TV shows, and then J.J. Abrams movies, which don't count. We're not going to count those. So 4 more movies and 4 more TV show spin-offs. And we're still not at the end, because Discovery is still going. Picard is still going. We're now heading into a 5th spin-off. They're doing Star Trek Brave New World with Captain Pike, Spock, and Number One, which they cast perfectly. The cast that they used on Star Trek Discovery. So we're still not finished. Gene Roddenberry's dream of this science fiction odyssey and this future that he created, it's still here. It's still being built upon. And we can all still enjoy it. I mean, I'm geeking out just thinking about it. Like, I'm so excited to see, where Brave New World goes, where Picard goes with the new season of Discovery coming out. I mean, it's amazing how something that started back in 1966 that only had 3 seasons under its belt could then turn into this massive empire that just continues to grow. And it makes my soul happy. It warms my heart. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I got to the end of this book where Shatner was talking about Roddenberry's death. And I mean, I'm sitting there practically crying about this. This man who created this story, this idea that you can have this kind of epic tale, and it just, characters that don't get lost in the action, characters that you learn to love, that you just, I mean, it's unparalleled by just about anything. And just the struggles of trying to figure out how to make it work, how to please, how to please Roddenberry, how to please the network, how to please the studio. Then, figuring out what the fans were going to like, figuring out, how were people going to respond to a pointy-eared alien that they had never heard of before. Can you imagine the first time that Spock walked out onto those TV screens with his pointed ears and his arched eyebrows, and everyone's sitting there going, what the hell is a Vulcan? And not only just a Vulcan, he's half Vulcan, half human. I mean, what is this? And I just think it would be so fascinating to talk to people who were there and saw it for the first time to find out, what were they thinking through all this? And okay, wow, this is a really long book review, and I'm so sorry. It's my passion that gets in the way, and anyway, it's a great look. Like I said, it's about the nuts and bolts of the TV show. It's a good foundation for figuring out, where Star Trek started, how it became so successful, and having it told from Shatner's perspective, where he was there for all of it. He was able to interview Nimoy and Koenig and Nichols and the directors, the writers, the producers, and just seeing how it all came about. I mean, like I said, it thrilled my soul. I was having so much fun with it. I think it's awesome. Anybody who is even close to being considered a Trekkie should read this book. At the very least, it'll entertain you. And I loved it. I gave it 4 stars out of 5. I just think it's awesome, and I think I may just have to go and start watching Star Trek all over again and, go through the movies one more time and try and go through the original series to point out all the things that Shatner talked about in the book. And it's an amazing book. I loved it. Thank you so much, Mr. Shatner, for writing it. And if you like Star Trek, you should read it too. So I absolutely recommend this to anyone who loves Star Trek. I guarantee you'll enjoy it. Okay, all right, we're going to wrap it up. I'm so sorry for going on and on and on. I know Ivan's going to get after me for doing a super long review, so I'm very sorry. Thank you so much for watching. You guys have a great day. Live long and prosper.